Hi, this is Mr. Gazelle. Thank you for joining me to review how to factor a trinomial into two binomial factors by using area equals length times width as a model. In the end, what we want to be able to do is take a trinomial, something with three terms like this, and factor it into two binomials. The answer to this problem is going to end up being the binomial 3x plus 2 times the binomial 2x minus 5. And we're going to talk about that in just a second, but bear with me. We've got a little bit to go through first before we can get to the details. So imagine that you just simply want to find two factors of 50. Remember, a factor is just something that can be multiplied by another factor to equal, in this case, 50. So, of course, 50 equals 5 times 10. So 5 is a factor and 10 is a factor. We have just factored 50. We have found two factors that multiply together to give us 50. Well, what I want to do today is actually look at area as a model for factoring an expression. So here we have a very simple expression, just a single number, 50, and we can see that if the length was 10 and the width was 5, that would give us an area of 50. So if we know an area, such as 50, and we can figure out a length and a width that would give us 50, 5 and 10, then we have factored 50. So area is a really good model for factoring something into two factors. Let's start by kind of going in the reverse order of what we actually want to do today. Let's say that we start out with our two factors and we want to see what they multiply together to give us. Well, using our area equals length times width as a model, we could look at this factor as the width of our rectangle and this factor as the width or the length of our rectangle. And so if we've got length times width of our rectangle here, I can see that 3x times 2x is 6x squared. 3x times negative 5 is negative 15x. 2x times 2x is 4x. And 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. So this expression is equivalent to the expression above here. I could say that 3x plus 2 times 2x minus 5 is exactly equal to 6x squared minus 15x plus 4x minus 10. And of course I've got some like terms here in the middle that I could combine. And so a better way of writing this expression would be 6x squared minus negative 15x and positive 4x gives me minus 11x minus 10. So this expression is the area of my rectangle, and this expression represents the product of two factors, 3x plus 2 and 2x minus 5. Well, what we really want to do today is to go backwards from this, to start with this trinomial and to figure out the two factors, 3x plus 2 and 2x minus 5, that would multiply together to give us this. And so I want us to notice a couple of things about this trinomial and this box. First of all, this negative 11x is the sum of these two terms. If I add 4x and negative 15x together, I get negative 11x. And I also want us to notice one other thing, and that is that these two terms, 4 times negative 15, are actually the same as these two terms multiplied together, 6x squared times negative 10. If I multiply these two terms, I get negative 60, and if I multiply these two terms, I get negative 60 as well. Looking at my trinomial here, 6x squared minus 11x minus 10, if I multiply these two terms together, I get negative 60x squared. I'm going to write negative 60 here. And then if I take this negative 11 and put it here, these two numbers that I need it to fill in my box need to multiply to negative 60, and they also need to add to negative 11. And the two numbers that multiply to negative 60 and add to negative 11 are 4 and negative 15. So let's finally get to the problem that we wanted to solve, which was we're given a trinomial, 6x squared minus 11x minus 10, and we want to factor it. In other words, we want to figure out two things that I can multiply together, and their product will be 6x squared minus 11x minus 10. So what I want to do is I want to represent this trinomial as the area of a rectangle, because then if I can figure out the length and the width, I will have factored this trinomial. And so I can start by putting the 6x squared in the upper left-hand corner and the negative 10 in the lower right. But this negative 11x here, it needs to be written as the combination of these two right here, these two boxes. And so, like we just mentioned, I know that this the numbers that are going to go in this box and this box are going to have to add up to negative 11x. And I also know that they're going to multiply to negative 60x squared. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 60 and add to negative 11. So if I didn't know what those two numbers were off the top of my head, I might start writing out the factors of negative 60. I've got 60 and 1. One of them is going to have to be negative and one of them is going to have to be positive. But those aren't going to give me negative 11. I've got 30 and 2. See, 60 is also divisible by 3, 20 and 3. It's also divisible by 4, 15 and 4. And if one of these is negative and one of them is positive, I can get negative 11 now. Actually, if this one is negative and this one is positive, these are going to add up to negative 11 and multiply to negative 60. So I know that the two numbers that I need to complete my rectangle here are going to be negative 15 and positive 4. So negative 15x and positive 4x. Now, this rectangle, the area of this rectangle, is equivalent to my original trinomial. Now, if only I could figure out a length and a width of this rectangle that when I multiplied it together would give me this area. If I could do that, I would have factored this trinomial. And I can do that simply by finding the greatest common factor between this row and then the greatest common factor of this row, and then the greatest common factor of this column, and then the greatest common factor of this column. Let's see how that works. So the greatest common factor between 6x squared and negative 15x is 3x. The greatest common factor between 4x and negative 10 is 2. The greatest common factor between 6x squared and 4x is 2x. And the greatest common factor between negative 15x and negative 10 is negative 5. So the length of this rectangle is 2x minus 5. And the height of this rectangle is 3x plus 2. Let's just make sure 3x times 2x gets me my 6x squared. 3x times negative 5 gets me my negative 15x. 2 times 2x is 4x. And 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. So I have just factored this trinomial into two factors that if I multiply them together will give me 6x squared minus 11x minus 10.